Bubble tea. Bubble tea.
Bubble tea.
Bubble tea!
Bubble tea. It's such a simple drink from Taiwan, just milk, tea, and sugar. And from its colonial history and its humble origins in Taiwan, it's become a global phenomenon, a cultural symbol of Asianness. And today, I'm gonna go on a pilgrimage of sorts, from Taipei to Taichung to the original tea shop where bubble tea was invented to see what this drink can teach me about my Asian American identity. Let's go. So I just arrived in Taichung, and I should probably briefly introduce what I mean by Asian American. My agong, which means grandfather in Taiwanese, he calls it the hyphenated identity, the sort of hyphen between Taiwanese and Canadian. And ever since I've been aware of that, the cultural identity, my Asianness and my Westernness, my Canadianness, Taiwaneseness, it's been a very complicated subject. But I'm living in Taiwan now, which puts me in a really unique position to actually engage in these questions of belonging and home and identity. And that's what I want to do today through the lens of bubble tea. Kind of goes without saying what bubble tea is, but for the uninformed, it's tea from China, it's milk and sugar in tea brought from Dutch colonists, it's tapioca from cassava root from South America, and you put that all together and you get this chewy, sugary tea drink. Bubble tea's kind of become a trend everywhere, just like a cultural symbol, global phenomenon, and there are a couple competing origin stories. One of them is here in Taichung. The story is that in this tea shop, a staff member put tapioca balls into her cold tea, and people thought, hey, that's pretty good. Now, that is apparently the origin story of this big thing called bubble tea, and I'm heading to that tea shop right now.
And this is the shop. Being in Tang was super neat. I mean, it's pretty clear from the beginning that this is the place where it was invented, at least like by the way that they advertise it. They have all these different posters and things on the walls that show all the interesting history. And so I just went with an original. 2杯真正奶茶. And it was huge. Huge. Came in this like big beer stein kind of thing. I felt like I was like at Taiwanese Oktoberfest or something. Anyway, it was really cool being in the original bubble tea shop, depending on what origin story you believe in. My immediate impression of the atmosphere and also drinking the bubble tea, which was pretty good, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. Not the best bubble tea, but pretty good, was that it didn't have the sort of tourist appeal that a lot of like the first or the best whatever, and then there's like a long lineup and everyone's there for the tourist attraction. Like clearly this is a place that people go to just to hang out, have some bubble tea, have some food. Like people that were eating there were clearly locals and just it was a good hangout spot. But at the same time, it was clearly a tea shop that had advertised itself as being the first place where bubble tea was invented. And being in a place where bubble tea is so readily accepted because of just how natural and normal it is, it really felt just like any other tea shop. But I guess that experience doesn't remove it from a lot of the political, cultural, gastronomical influences and facets of this drink. So just sitting here, drinking my bubble tea, thinking about how much this drink represents to so many people, so many cultures, it's nice. It's good. Good bubble tea.
So obviously, bubble tea is more than just a popular drink. It's a cultural symbol, a political tool. It's an unmistakable part of Asian identity. But what does it have to do with my Asianness, my Asian identity? And how does being in Taiwan, where bubble tea was invented, literally in the tea shop where bubble tea was invented, change that conversation? In the next part of this video, I want to get a little bit more personal. I'm going to start interrogating these deeper questions about belonging and identity and my Asian American identity through the lens of bubble tea. So I'm going to go and walk to a park and talk about these questions and drink more bubble tea. I guess my first response is pride, sort of in the way that I'm from Taiwan and this popular thing is from Taiwan, so I'm super proud to have this representation, I guess. But that just doesn't hold up, right? Like, there must be more to this drink and to me than just national pride. So I'm still trying to figure out why the feeling of pride that I thought would be evoked wasn't as strong or as genuine as I thought it would be. And I feel like it has to do with the fact that bubble tea as a symbol of Asian identity doesn't hold up as much in Taiwan because bubble tea is a normal thing here. in Canada, bubble tea shops are advertised as made in Taiwan. But in Taiwan, it's just bubble tea. No one questions the ubiquity of this drink because it's just another beverage option. Not a novelty, it's normal. Now you could argue that bubble tea is also normalized in North America. Like Asian American communities have taken this drink and they've popularized it into this global trend. So yeah, maybe it is normal, but it's normal because it's common, it's everywhere. But it doesn't have the same kind of normalcy that you get with the place that it's from. Bubble tea in North America still feels special or novel or foreign in some way. The changing feeling about bubble tea, depending on where I am, might have to do with the cultural spaces that I occupy and my Asian American identity and how that morphs and adapts based off of the places I'm in. In Richmond, where I grew up, bubble tea was a common thing. It was a special treat that I got when I went grocery shopping with my mom. And it was special not because it was rare, but because I was a kid and I liked sugary drinks. Like living in New Brunswick, when I was about 1 in 1,200 Asians, I felt like a minority. So when a bubble tea shop opened down the road, I was ecstatic. I was overjoyed. Not only did I have access to a flavor that I was familiar with and was part of my childhood, but I also had access to a cultural product that I could attach my Asian identity to, especially in the face of prejudice and racism because of my skin color and what I looked like. Bubble tea was sort of a way to access those Asian qualities, the Asian part of me, that heritage, especially something that was made from Taiwan. The special feeling of bubble tea that I had in Canada felt sort of oppositional to Western society. It's this idea that among the various parts of our identities, we value those that feel under threat, either directly or at risk of being consumed by the larger dominant culture. But that oppositional identity just isn't a thing in Taiwan because I'm in Taiwan. Bubble tea doesn't feel special in Taiwan because it's just a drink here. This precious symbol of Taiwanese-ness just becomes a drink. So maybe it's kind of not pride, but a sense of ease that, you know, this is where I'm from. I'm among my people. But saying that I'm among my people, it feels like a simplification, right? Like, yeah, I'm Taiwanese, partially. My parents were born here, my grandparents were born here. I spent summers here. I'm comfortable here. It's like returning to a childhood house. It's familiar, it evokes memories, it's formative, it's calming. But by virtue of the hyphenated identity, this childhood house is not entirely my own. Being in Taiwan, it's not a space that I move through effortlessly like in Canada. Based off of my Mandarin language skills here, I'm constantly tripping on my face trying to get my point across. I can read rice, noodle, and soup, which gets me by at most restaurants, kind of. My Mandarin is conversational and my accent is pretty good. Sometimes I'm mistaken as a local, but then when I realize that I can't read anything or that I'm barely understanding what someone is saying, and then I'll say something strange or accidentally say something rude, and then I have to explain, oh, I'm from Canada, there's that friction in this cultural space that I am attached to, but I'm not completely part of. So I occupy this strange space as a Canadian foreigner, but also as a Taiwanese person. In different ways, I associate myself with both partially, but completely I'm neither. Bringing it back to bubble tea, I think that's why I feel so hesitant to name the emotion as pride, because it feels too simple just to say, oh, this is made in Taiwan, I'm partially Taiwanese, this is popular, therefore I should be proud. It's mistaking food as identity, as a tangible product being a reflection of who I am. So I'm getting this weird feeling now where it's like, even though I'm drinking the bubble tea from like the actual store, the original store that it was invented, it doesn't feel like the most authentic Taiwanese experience. Like, this isn't all of Taiwan. I mean, I enjoy it, don't get me wrong, like, this is great, it's good bubble tea, but it just isn't the whole story, just part of it. As you can see all around the store that I was just at, Tang, it feels like it's like, oh, this is the birthplace of bubble tea. Here, someone decided to put tapioca pearls into tea and boom, you know, a global phenomenon was created. But the story of bubble tea popularizing into the West and the world is not just A to B. It's not just like, oh, we put tapioca pearls in a tea, that's imported to the West. It is a far more nuanced and complicated story. You have the history, you have the origin of tea, the colonial narratives of the Dutch bringing milk and sugar and bringing cassava root from South America, to the Asian sphere and all of that crazy colonial international cultural exchange. You have more recent diasporic narratives of Asian American migrants bringing bubble tea to Chinese and Asian cultural enclaves like the San Gabriel Valley in California, where bubble tea starts popularizing in America. Then you have the further cultural export of Asian flavors like QQ, tapioca, or brown sugar, or cheese foam to North America. Bubble tea shops in North America innovating and taking a lot of those flavors back to Taiwan. Basically what I'm saying is that bubble tea as a global phenomenon is a story of disparate parts, of a complex network of influences, and it is just a far more complicated story than just bubble tea gets popular in the East, bubble tea is popular in the West. So yeah, bubble tea is quintessentially Taiwanese to the extent that it was made in Taiwan. But we need to recognize everything before and everything after. To see this as the only thing that bubble tea is, like the most authentic version, is to completely ignore all the foodways and the nuanced innovation of flavor that is not geographically bound to here in Taichung, in Chenchuitang. Like, there's far more that has to do with bubble tea that extends beyond Taiwan. It's not purely something owned by Taiwan. Yeah, it's a Taiwanese cultural product, but it is something of the world now, right? To see this as the only authentic bubble tea experience because it's from Taiwan and the tea shop it was made is far too narrow. So I just feel like it's a bit limited to say that authenticity with bubble tea can be located in a specific place. You can't point to a specific place as a single site of authenticity. I guess what I'm talking about is authenticity and belonging, how that maps onto complex things like history and identity. I guess, yeah, this is the most authentic Taiwanese bubble tea you'll get insofar as it's the closest to the place that it was invented. But that doesn't mean that bubble tea experiences in different places that aren't Taiwan are any less tasty or meaningful. Like in New Brunswick, I had some great bubble tea because it meant a lot to me. And one of my first observations in Taiwan is that bubble tea can be bad. I've had my fair share of bland tea and overcooked tapioca. What I'm trying to say is that authentic experiences cannot only be located in a specific place. And in addition to that, there's no essential bubble tea experience. Drinking bubble tea from the tea shop it was invented may seem like the most authentic experience there is, but it hinges upon this narrow idea that food and place are all that we have to define authenticity. In the same way, I don't belong to Taiwan because I'm in my family's place of origin, right? Like, there is no essential identity that I'm trying to uncover, some final balance between my Canadianness and my Taiwaneseness that makes me feel like I've arrived at my bicultural identity. I'm not trying to get rid of my Western influences to figure out who I am as a Taiwanese person. Those things kind of exist at the same time. It's not binary, it's not a balance, it's not a choice. What I'm realizing and confronting this strange experience of stumbling through Taiwan as part local and part Canadian tourist is that identity is constructed. It's a conversation and it's a complicated one. I thought a more concrete sense of my identity meant feeling more sure of it. Like, if I pared down on the Western influences of my identity, I'd get to a more essential understanding of who I was as a Taiwanese person. And being in Taiwan was a chance to see if that was true. Well, what I'm learning is that that's not true at all. Also, the sun's really bright. I'm using bubble tea as a focal point of this conversation as a way to really ask the deeper hearted questions about authenticity and belonging and heritage and home, especially in the face of globalization and the strange marginal spaces between cultures. Having this conversation with a camera in a park as people look at me strange and I drink my bubble tea, I don't have any deeper insight to give as to what it means for me to be Canadian and Taiwanese. I don't have a sense of what that hyphen means in between those two words. But what I do know is that this identity is a conversation. It's a process and it's not an endpoint. Sure, my Asian American identity feels as blurry as it did before, but there's something reassuring or at least encouraging about this, that I don't have to lean one way or the other. I don't have to see something like this as purely Taiwanese or something else. I am learning to appreciate the nuance of what this can mean, how authenticity doesn't have to sit in one place geographically, physically, how belonging doesn't have to be from one place or another place. It's not a choice of two options, or even a choice at all. My job in having this conversation about my Asian American identity isn't about staking authenticity in one place, in the same way that you can't locate bubble tea in any place at all. Like the story of bubble tea, which started long before this and will continue far beyond it. It's a network that grows outwards and can't be reduced down to a single place. So whether I'm ordering a half ice, half sugar bubble tea in Toronto or a 半冰半糖珍珠奶茶 in Taiwan, I am as I am. So whatever Asian Americanness means to me and whatever this means alongside it, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of this.
Welcome to my outro everyone. Ow. This is a small channel, so ow. Small channel, so anyone who likes it subscribe makes a big difference. Ow. Ow, it hit my face again. So if you liked it, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. Ow. I haven't got a single one yet. And stay tuned for other stuff. I got one.
Just hit myself in the face with tapioca like 6 times and I only got it in my mouth once. Well, there's only one way to really finish this video, isn't there? Bye everyone. Thanks for watching.